doing?
Hey, this is Nomad, host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast. Why do they call me Nomad? Well, I traveled the globe, spreading the joy of music one song at a time. And now I bring you wisdom, tried and true knowledge, and life experiences of my colleagues and peers in this crazy business we call music. Welcome to part 2 of the Career Musician Podcast with my good friend and career musician drummer, Dave Hooper.
This is the Career Musician Podcast with your host, Nomad.
In this episode, we talk about the following topics: wage negotiating, how to quit a gig properly, studio etiquette, playing what the song actually needs instead of what you think it needs. When you're the strongest link in the band, what do? How to use dynamics as they're applied to different instruments, guitar, piano, drums, etc. Dave Hooper's inspiration from his good college buddy, Gary Novak, who has also gone on to be a tremendous career musician drummer. The corporate jobs that Dave has taken as supplemental income to his career in music. And finally, we close with his amazing website, Possible Chops, which once again breaks down the mechanics of drumming for everybody to see and hear clearly. All right, well, that seems like you gave this person a fair warning, if you will, and you covered your bases. You looked them square in the eye. You told them a little bit about the conversation and how you were feeling.
Yeah.
You followed up with an email for your paper trail. And then everybody's happy. He went his way, you went your way.
Yeah.
That's the way to quit a gig, really.
Yeah. Well, and you have to be prepared to walk away. It's not. Wasn't about calling a bluff or anything.
I always say, you can't negotiate unless you're willing to walk. That's negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's say you get offered a gig, and they say, you know what, the gig pays $2,500 a week. It's a 6-week tour. And you say, yeah. I'd really like to make $4,000 a week.
Yeah.
They say, I'm sorry, we can't do it. Would you do that?
Yeah.
So are you going to take the 25, or are you willing to walk?
Well, it's funny if they just come back with, we can't do it, and they're not giving you a counter offer.
Right.
Then you're like, shoot, okay,
so
well.
What do you do?
Because you got to wonder, like it's like you're at a swap meet or something. It's like, well, I'm going to ask for this, and you ask for this, and we'll meet in the middle.
What would you do?
Well, if 25 was what it was, I guess you have to look at your life situation and your level of happiness, and because I'm a firm believer that if you take a gig, you own it.
You're there.
You took the gig.
Yes.
Don't take a gig and complain.
And half-ass it.
Yeah.
Or complain. Yes.
I mean, musicians will complain, and we'll kind of, we'll get into it a little bit, but it's, if you really shouldn't have taken it. And that's interesting, because you were talking about the gig that we did in New York, and I would love, I got to say, it was a milestone for me, too, because you and I are very different personality types. Right. And we're really close friends. You were the best man at my wedding. Like, yes. I'm like, but I would say you being that sort of New York, Cuban, Italian, New Yorker, and I'm like this politically correct California dude, like you wouldn't think that we'd be as good of friends, but it was fascinating because we were doing the gig and things weren't going well, and you stood on principle, and it was a totally memorable experience. I don't know if you've thought about this story in a while.
It's funny because it's probably about 10 years now, maybe 10 years. Yeah, I think it's actually 10 years exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So what happened was we get on the gig with a very well-known celebrity artist, and we're playing a very high, cloudy kind of club in New York.
Yeah,
Swanky.
and some TV shows
and
in the morning
TV
and stuff
promo.
too.
Right. And, we go out on it's a little promo tour, but then we do this residence at this club for like a week or just under. I'm the music director. I put the band together, and we get out to New York. And, it's always a long flight going from the west to the east and east to the west. So you come off of a 5-6 hour flight. Then you're stuck in a car for an hour each way trying to get to each airport. You get to your hotel. You're exhausted. It's a long travel day. You left your house at 5 a.m., whatever. These travel logistics are real, right?
Yeah.
We know this.
Yeah.
Your body is only conditioned to handle so much of that before it says, you know what, fuck this, I'm over it. When I finally get to the hotel, I want to do two things. Go up to my room, drop my bags, and roll. So we call it the drop and roll.
Yeah.
And the roll consists of going to find the kill, going to find the food, right?
Yeah.
Back in the archaic days, you'd have to go hunt for your food. So we're going to hunt. We just
Drop your
landed.
bags,
We
let's
don't
go
know
find a
where
place
we
to eat.
are. Let's go find a place to eat. Now, if you're with some friends, it's great because you're like, wow, this is neat. I'm working, but before we commence the work tomorrow, we get to actually hang and have a really nice meal together.
Yeah.
So you're excited about that.
And we're in New York City.
We're in New York City, so it's, that's my home, so I'm like, wow, I'm super elated, right? Now, I'm in my, early, mid-30s. I had money in the bank. Maybe I didn't have a lot, but I still have money in the bank. But I'm irked by the fact that I'm forced to tap into that money to eat instead of getting my per diem ration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get your per diems every day, whatever it is, $30, $40, $50 a day, whatever you negotiate, and that's
it's
fine.
the per day money
per day
that
money,
when you're on tour, you get cash to feed yourself. For those who don't know,
and per diem is just Latin for per day. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's standard. When you're on...
And actually, any job, any industry. So if you're a sales agent for a healthcare company, you get per diem when you travel.
Yeah. And some might say, I don't pay per diem, and it's up to you to take it or not.
Right.
But they'll usually feed you at the venue, or they'll...
Right.
Sometimes the good leaders will take you out to eat and stuff.
Or they pad your salary for the week, whatever.
Yeah.
So we had a per diem agreement. So we get to the hotel, and the tour manager tells me, because I'm the music director, so I address it. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, the banks were closed. We couldn't get the cash, so we'll give it to you tomorrow.
I thought it was like 2 days later or something.
Maybe it was. So maybe that was like a Friday, and we couldn't get it
to your benefit, I honestly think it wasn't like the next day thing.
Yeah. So I'm like, wow, okay, all right. So anyway, when I go back to address with her the same issue, she says to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've been busy. I haven't had a chance to go to the bank and get cash." So my Cuban, Italian, New York self lost it.
And I was there for it. This is awesome.
I was like, so what do you mean? So wait a minute. I think this was the third or fourth time that I'm asking you for this per diem. I have a group of 6, 7 people here that are relying on this. Yeah, you're paying us, but you're not paying us till the gig is over.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get a check until we go home a week from now.
Yeah.
We're running
so we're having to come out of pocket
so
for
now
them.
we're coming out of pocket for 2 or 3 days just to feed ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, if you think to yourself, you say, oh, well, that's no big deal. You just go get some McDonald's. Okay, first of all, I stopped eating McDonald's when I was 12. Okay? Second of all...
New York is expensive.
New York is expensive. Whatever. Just whatever it is. Okay?
Yeah.
So it is on principle.
Yeah.
So I did kind of lose it with this person, and I didn't scream and yell and make a fuss, but I did let her know my disdain for the situation.
Yeah.
And before I got home, I submitted an email of course I can't think of the word. I resigned, a resignation email.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when I got home, I got the same email of "you're fired." So it was like our emails crossed.
Perfect synergy. Yes,
exactly.
You can't fire me because I quit.
Oh no, sorry, sir. We fired you.
Well, my memory of it, which I thought was really interesting, was that there was conversation amongst the band, and I think you actually brought it to us, and you were sort of saying, look, guys, I think this is important. This is important to me. I want to make sure it's important to you guys.
Right, I did do that, yeah.
Are you guys okay to stand with me? Because united, we have like this united front. And I can remember there was a split in the band, but I do remember it was a really interesting bonding moment with you and I.
It was.
Because it was like, no, I see the principle here. I liked the gig. I was enjoying the gig. It was okay. It wasn't hard. It was just...
It was an easy gig.
It was a celebrity. It was kind of fun, But...
and ironically, the celebrity was a great person.
He was awesome.
Very nice.
He or she. Yeah. Whoever he or she may be.
They were such a cool person. I was like, wow,
Yeah, he deserved his legendary status in the industry. But he was insulated from it by his machinery. And it came to light that was how they typically did it. But I feel like, what's interesting, the question of respect in the music industry, and the reason I felt really happy to stand with you, which was,
Man, I do
it
remember
had
that,
to do
yeah.
with respect. It's like, okay, yeah, the old guys were okay with you guys doing your business the way you did it, but like,
Kinda
I'm not
half-assed.
the old guy.
Right.
I'm a pro. I know
Yeah.
what I'm doing. This is what is standard for me. I'm out. I'm not going to dip into my own pocket. You know, like I got it,
Man,
and
yeah.
I feel like, you know, it was a good principle to stand on and to stand together, and like the chips fell, and we both left the gig.
I remember it was like,
like-
you left the gig based
Yeah.
on our agreement, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this
And the other
guy-
guys in the band
No, they
didn't,
stayed.
and you're not as, you know, like they're
Yeah,
still
exactly.
acquaintances.
But I even told one of the guys, I was like, you know what? I think you could be the MD. And I called him. And see, this is the weird part about being a New Yorker and so being so upfront with your emotions that people feel uncomfortable. Because I remember calling this musician and saying, hey, bro, I'm done. But I referred you for the MD.
Yeah,
and
and he
you
went on
should
to
be
do
the
it,
MD.
didn't he?
Yeah, and he told me, oh, I don't want to be
Yeah,
the
he was
MD.
kind of a-
I was like, no, he was apprehensive. I was like, no. Silly goose, I handed you the gig. Take it. Like, and I'm being nice
that guy,
right
yeah.
now.
He's currently selling, whatever.
But I'm like, come
Yeah.
on, man. Don't. And he finally took the gig. He took it as the MD. But my point is this, like, look, I have no problems telling you, F you, I'm out. But
Yeah.
hey, bro, I know a guy.
Yeah.
You should get with him.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'll totally hook you up as I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I
That's
just-
kind of a professional thing to do.
Yeah,
Oh, and I
and
don't
that's
know
how
if
it
I
should
ever
go.
told you, but that leader, that celebrity, called me. Did I ever tell you?
You did.
He called
You
me
did.
and he said,
To
listen,
question
Dave,
the whole
he's like,
incident, right?
I understand how tight you are with
Yeah.
Nomad, and you guys are buddies. You guys are basically like family. So he's like, I just want to let you know, like, I'm going to miss you in the band, but I respect you for standing on principle with him. So, again, I was like, you know, I almost want to throw his name in there. I'm not going to, but I
know.
was like, good on you, man. But, and then I thought,
Wow.
well, then why don't you go talk to
I
the
wish,
people?
yeah, and that's what I was
say,
just gonna say. I wish
"Listen."
he would have called me. If he would have called me, we could have squashed it so quickly.
Yeah. Hey, here's the thing I want to... we've talked about this before, and it's happened so many times. When we're called to play a gig, we're supposed to show up on stage ready to play. When someone else's gig is to provide per diem, and they say, oh, I'll get to it.
I'll get to
There's
it.
no way we can say, you know what, I'll get to learning the drums
yeah.
parts, and you'll get to learning the guitar.
That's right.
We'll have it by Wednesday.
The-
It's like, no, it's Monday.
The gig is Monday.
We got a gig. You can't do... I couldn't do my gig with that sort of...
Lackadaisical attitude.
Yeah, I'd be fired if I did my gig the way you're doing yours. And somehow you're the person who's been with this celebrity for 20 years. And I'm like, you know what? The justice there was they didn't actually deserve the more professional...
Right.
musicians, and okay, you could say prima donnas, we need our per diem, but all we were doing is feeding ourselves. This isn't like money that's lying in our pockets. Like, we're here for you.
Yeah.
We're making you look good. Your name's on the marquee. We're just the sidemen. Like, we're not getting anything but a paycheck from this, and we're going into debt to go to play for you,
And
you're paying us back.
See, we got to reiterate. You're going into debt momentarily to work
For the
you.
privilege of working.
And that is the part that
Yeah.
irks me. And I know it sounds like such a, and I talked about this with Adam Blackstone, who's one of the premier MDs in the business right
Yeah.
now. He was just on a couple episodes ago, and he said, I have buddies who won't do the gig, if that happens. But he says, I've been in those situations before, and he says, if it happens, I'll let it slide. I'll say something, but I'll let it slide. I address it with management immediately, and I say, hey, you need to fix this.
Yeah.
And then if they don't fix it, of course you have an issue.
Yeah.
But usually once you address it, they fix it.
They fix it, yeah.
And that's all I was hoping for with this particular artist.
And
was for
I
the
think
chance
there
to,
was maybe even an easier solution that they could have said, which is something we've faced many times, where they say, it pays this much all in, no per diem. And it's like, okay, done. Then you take it, I'll feed myself, I'm fine.
It's what it is.
You
That's
throw
right.
some, if it's really that big of a deal, you throw some freaking food in your suitcase. And
well, I do that anyway.
Okay.
I always
Low
have
blood sugar over there.
I always
yes.
have protein
No.
bars. I always have almonds. I always have little pieces of fruit, oranges or apples that kind of last a little while, almost non-perishable. I always have my little snacks because I just know me.
Well, you do what you need to do for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because traveling, it's not like you have access to your kitchen. And really, for anybody who has yet to do a gig that had per diem and is really new to the concept, when you're home, you have access to your grocery store, your refrigerator.
Right.
And shopping at the grocery store is cheaper,
yes,
than going out to eat. When you're on the road, all you got is going out to eat, or you go to the grocery store, but you don't have a kitchen.
It's just
it's a scramble to make it happen. And frankly, like you and I were in New York. I'm not a New Yorker. You are.
Yeah.
And I was frankly looking forward to Michael, take me to all your spots, man.
Yeah,
I'm ready to I'm ready to check it out because I don't know where the hell I'm going. Why are there's a 42nd and a 42nd? One's a street, one's an avenue. Who designed this city?
All right, so listen, but look, you get to a certain point in your life and you do gigs and you realize, I am allowed to enjoy myself on the job sometimes. I'm not working. It's a travel day.
Yeah.
So those are or after the gig, those are the moments that you want to go enjoy a nice meal. So that is part of the thing. And look, like we said, the career musician, it's all about the hang. For 22 hours a day, you're together.
It's just hang.
Off stage.
Not music. Yeah.
For 2 hours a day, you're on stage.
Yeah.
So you have to get accustomed to that lifestyle. All right. Yeah. Before we get to the crux of the matter, which we started with, which is possible chops.
Yeah.
Because we're going to conclude with that. But before we get to that crux, I want to talk really quickly about studio etiquette.
Yeah.
We touched on it a little bit earlier. You had a very fortunate upbringing where you were in the studio from your early teens.
Yeah.
Studio etiquette, a lot of people say, what do you mean by studio etiquette? Well, what do you think I mean? I want to hear your take on it.
Well, recording in the studio is different than practicing, different than playing a live gig.
Right.
You're indoors. You're in a very controlled situation. There's mics on everything. You're sort of under the microscope there. My experience doing jingles, which was where I started, was I was called on to play everything. One day I was playing like a Beatles kind of a thing, and then the next day it was a Rolling Stones kind of thing, and then the next day it was this R&B thing, and then next day we're recording with Herbie Hancock for this AT&T commercial. I'm like,
wow.
To be able to put on all the different hats.
Yeah.
You need to do that. I think there's something about the experience of working in the studio that gives you insight into what's necessary. Typically, less is more in the studio. Unless, of course, you're doing some weird, fusion record or something. I don't know. It's interesting for me, having grown up watching my dad. I think when I was a kid, I have these memories of going to work with him and just sort of like pressing my face against the glass and looking into the, at the drummer or the other people and how they did it. And it was informative, and then it just was natural for me because there wasn't a lot of questions. I just did what they did.
Right.
Not everybody gets that advantage that I had, and I'm grateful for it.
Neat.
For sure. But yeah, I mean, that first time that you play and then you go into the booth and listen back, it's a big day, man. That's a day you're like, wow, that's, hopefully you're lucky and you're like, yep, that's exactly what I was expecting. But most of the time it's like, ooh, that's really weird. But yeah,
but thank God for engineers who know their job to make us sound good with the preamps and the mic selections.
But that's everybody doing their part, and making it cohesive and work. And for drummers, locking into a click is a really important thing. You've heard it from probably everybody from your very first teacher, like practice with the metronome. It's not just practicing with the metronome to set the tempo of something, but it's really to lock into that. And I remember this concept of burying the click. This was sort of a John Robinson thing. It was one of my heroes. This idea where like you're so locked in with the click, no one even knows there's a click.
Because every time the click clicks, it's perfect time with your kick drum, your snare drum, your hi-hat, so you can't hear the click.
You can't even hear it.
It's masked by your instrument.
Yeah, because if you're a little before, in front of it or a little behind it, you'll hear it. It's like a little flam. These drum terms, right? But really burying the click and being solid like that and realizing, okay, so my role as in the drummer chair is a bit of a leader, sort of driving the bus, as they say, like, if I'm doing that, they will follow me. You know what I mean? It really is.
You said that. I use that term all the time. The bus driver, the drummer is driving the bus. I always say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody has responsibility for time. I think a guitar player or bass player
Right.
can really pull at a drummer one direction or the other.
Right.
And I am always appreciative of anybody who's like feeling like it's lagging or whatever. You know, guitar player sometimes like, come on, man, let's just, let's dig in a little more. You know, and it's like, I don't know. Sometimes it happens. Unless you're a robot and you're a machine, you're. You're always dealing with varying levels of energy and enthusiasm for the song. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm touching on enough of the things that go into what I hear in the studio, but I'm always happiest if it's clean and right on the money and appropriate. I would say, like, playing appropriately is probably the drummer's best advice. Play to the song.
So let's say we're in the studio, I'm the producer, and there's a 5-piece band, and I say, hey, guys, that was our third take, and we still didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do another take, but guys, this song is so, again, there's this word nuanced. We have to be careful not to get overexcited. We have to be careful not to overplay, not to underplay. We have to feel the tempo. There's a rubato section. You have to be led by the leader on that section. Blah blah blah. So I'm the producer giving all these directions. As the drummer, what do you say? Do you chime in? Do you keep your mouth shut? This is the etiquette.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot that goes in there. I think. We touched on ego a little bit, but this idea of being able to take direction, I think that's where it starts. You need to be able, if the producer is saying, I need it to be simpler or whatever, you can't think it, I mean, you can think whatever you want, but you can't go into it frustrated, like, I hear it more busy. It's like, look, the producer has something in mind. This is not your song.
Thank you.
And it's like, if the song requires simple, do simple.
Without an attitude.
Without an attitude. And be open to that because, again, shoe on the other foot. A producer is there to produce. He's there to provide some direction. And your ability to interpret what they need is really important. And I will share with you one really cool session that I did. I referenced the Herbie Hancock AT&T session. So I got the opportunity to play on an AT&T commercial, and it was kind of a long-form commercial with Wallace Roney, great trumpet player, and Herbie Hancock. And it was a straight-ahead thing. It was supposed to sound like a Miles Davis kind of thing. And so we were in the studio, and we were playing, and we went back to listen, and it was a little too weird. It was like we went left. It went really outside jazz. I don't know how into jazz. It was really avant-garde. It was a really like, woo,
maybe this isn't for AT&T.
Yeah. It was for AT&T. It was a little like, wow. And so I remember sitting in the studio, and of course everyone's sort of a bit starstruck by Herbie, and she was saying, you know what? That's my fault.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, what do you mean? We had him elaborate. He's like, and he was sharing great stories of playing with Miles Davis and stuff. He's like, he even shared his first time playing with Miles. He was so starstruck by Miles Davis, he just kind of sat at the piano and he didn't play. Mm-hmm. And then he did this wonderful Miles Davis imitation. Like, hey man, I need you to play. Give me something. I can't do Miles Davis or whatever. And so what he realized was like every instrument has some control. Every instrument can influence every other instrument, and so particularly in jazz. He stayed more tonically within the realm of what we were doing. So we went back in and did another take, and he just kind of kept it inside, right, not outside. And right down the middle, not left, or whatever, however you do it. Sure. And then we went back and listened to the next take, and I was like, oh, man, that was so different.
Yeah.
And really amazing to me. And I think, as a drummer, drummers always get looked at for the tempo and time. And I don't necessarily disagree, but I would say it's everybody. Everybody can influence everybody else in the band. And when it really is locking, and we're all on the same page trying to achieve the same goal, we'll get there. You know what I mean? You as a producer, you might be facing like, gosh, this bass player just won't change up what he's doing. And what can you do? You gotta figure out a way. That goes to your skills psychologically as a leader for someone who is immovable.
Yes.
But I would say as a drummer, I like to think that my victory is playing appropriately, not playing what I hear. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, maybe that's the takeaway I would say. Find victory in playing the right thing, not showing off what you can do.
Drummers! So you're watching an amazing drummer on YouTube, and they're playing something so crazy you just can't figure it out. If only you can tap this drummer on the shoulder and say, hey, can you slow it down and break it down for me, man? PossibleChops.com does exactly that. They've asked some of the top-of-the-line drummers to play in short, digestible phrases some of their craziest chops. Then they slow it down and transcribe it so you can actually learn what the heck they're doing. They're making chops possible. Now, PossibleChops.com is an online drum lesson website that makes it easy to add to your drumming vocabulary from some of the baddest professional drummers. And when I say baddest, I mean the dopest, illest, most ridiculousest drummers you ever heard. Imagine getting a breakdown from drummers who played with the likes of Usher, Earth, Wind & Fire, Chick Corea, Babyface, Sheryl Crow, Tony Braxton, and the list goes on. The PossibleChops.com community is designed to allow drummers to share ideas and help you on your path to becoming a pro and getting gigs. That's right, folks, actually getting real gigs. If you're serious about drumming, do yourself a favor and visit PossibleChops.com. Join today, and basic membership is free. However, if you decide to upgrade to a pro membership, use the promo code NOMAD to get your first free month. That's right, folks. Use coupon code NOMAD and you get the whole first month absolutely free. Adding new chops are now made possible for drummers on PossibleChops.com.
Make your voice heard. Leave a review and subscribe at the Career Musician Podcast.
What do you do when you're the strongest link in the chain and you're put in a room with some other musicians who you kind of have to drag along for the ride?
Yeah. Gosh, that's tough. I
do you
feel
burn
like
the session and say, you know what, man? You do speak privately with the producer and say this is a bust because of X, Y, Z.
you know.
Or do you bite your tongue and just go with it?
Yeah, I guess I've been in that situation before. I think.
And let's say you're making double scale, so you stand to make $1,700 that day.
Yeah.
On a film date.
On a film date, yes.
Well,
Wow.
you know what? On a film date, that's never going to happen because they're going to call the best A-list cats. Okay,
Yeah.
let's just say it's a big date.
B-level guys like you. Yeah.
No, you know what I mean?
No, yeah.
You don't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, in Los Angeles, when you get called for a film date, it's all AAA guys and gals. You know.
Well,
so,
okay.
you know.
So it's interesting. So a couple things come to mind. One is in the studio, and this has happened to me many times. Like you can do a take, and you can, as a drummer, like I can be happy with that take.
Yeah.
And the bass player might need some fixes.
Right.
You know, and so you can say, and the producer that are cool, they're like, how did you feel? And I'm like, you know what? I actually felt really solid on that. I think you're good with the drums. And so then I'm done.
I love that. So you kind of influence the producer with that comment now.
Yeah. Well, if they're receptive to it, it's like, you know what? I felt like it was a good lock. In general, the lock with me and the bass player, like I kind of build it from there. The lock with the bass player was good. He might have hit a couple of wrong notes, but that can be fixed. You just punch in and fix that. If the guitar player is way out there, let's see.
Pass.
It's like, give him another chance at this, or I guess that sort of translates in that's your problem.
Art.
But I don't know. I mean, that's not really constructive. I mean, you want to on any bandstand
of being in the session.
It does no good to divide people. We've had that conversation many times. To really get like, man, you're not bringing it. Okay, well, your choices are either scrap it right there and call someone else, or let's see if we can't make this thing right. And now with digital audio, you can do a lot of edits, and that's not super fun and it's super time consuming. But I don't know, man. I would say maybe your skill at your instrument. Maybe I can only speak as a drummer. I sort of feel like drums, in some ways more is more like the glue for everybody else, and the responsibility from the drum chair is to arbitrate between everybody. If the bass player plays on the backside of the beat and the guitar player is rushing a little bit, you're the guy in the middle, and it's like you gotta make it work. And the really good players, your legendary players, they can do it. And you want to challenge yourself to be that guy.
Be that guy, that person that can just lock it.
I'd like to think I'm that guy. I don't know. I feel like that's what I try to do.
Absolutely. Look, I had a session yesterday, and I led with this. I said, guys, this is a hybrid experimental session today. I would appreciate everybody's patience, because I feel that we're going to do at least 3 to 5 takes on each song.
Yeah.
And I don't want any one person feeling like they've accomplished it so they can go sit in the control room while the other people overdub.
Interesting. That's.
I want us to play as an ensemble every time.
Every time.
For every take.
Yeah. So you established that right at the get.
That right away.
Yeah.
I just squelched all that, because instead of the percussionist saying, "Oh no, I'm good. I got my parts." Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But guess what? On take 4.
Yeah.
The bass player and the guitar player are going to play something totally different.
Yeah,
So how do you know?
That's more of a creative move. I totally. It's funny, at the risk of sounding like it's conflict with what the previous thing with I'm good locking in. I would say like there's so many variables there. Like if you're really trying to create something
that breathes as a unit.
Yeah.
Then you have to.
That is that thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think it depends on the format. You know, if it's just pop and you're supposed to. As a drummer, you're supposed to sound like a drum machine.
Right.
There's not a lot of room for creative stuff there.
Interpretation,
right. But I would say that too. And as you stray deeper into improvisational music or more creative music, less pop, machine programmed kind of stuff, you have to adjust. But I would say that deserves some attention. You know, like you gotta ID what this is.
Right.
You know.
You have to have that discernment.
Yeah, like when I did the sessions for Sean Callery and the Jessica Jones stuff, and then the Homeland stuff.
Right.
That's free jazz. It's not contemporary pop. You know. It was meant to be creative, and it was really interesting to see how Sean was as a producer. He would speak. He's a totally schooled musician. He can speak in musical terms, but at that session, he was more concerned with the energy and the level of tension in this spot, and then the volume, and like he was speaking more like that. So that becomes kind of an interesting skill you have to interpret. Like, what does that mean when they want more tension? Right. You're a drummer, and you're like, well. There's tension on my drum heads to make them, but it's not that. It's like,
tell us, how do you create tension? I know how I do it as a guitar player. How would you do it as a drummer?
Yeah. I think, harmonically is maybe easier because you're talking about dissonance and some other harmonic things.
I would play a lot of close intervals.
Yeah. With drums, it can be, let's see, there's these things you can draw on. You can be busy. You can provide something that's somehow outside the very natural rhythms that the pulse is going by. You can kind of play around that. Polyrhythmic, and kind of push the boundaries of being in time and out, because you can kind of get that. And then there's a lot of sort of sound effects or I want to try to sound design where you're
scrapes and things like that.
You can kind of go to some really odd things that go beyond just playing 2 and 4 time. It's like it's you want to be more creative and busy and simple and light and like heavy. I love it. It's hard to put a pinpoint on, and it goes back to the early conversation, which is how do you really describe music? It's not that. And thankfully, we had plenty of takes to do it, and then. Then you go in the studio and there's a lot of, I really like this section and that really works. Let's do more of that here and let's do that there. And in the end, it's, it's this cool creative thing, which I really like. That's a style of music I really enjoy. I wish I could do more of that, but that's not.
It's not in the cards for avant jazz these days to earn a living, right?
Yeah, maybe with soundtrack stuff, or it's a small market. But I find myself more and more like I'm less interested in the really easy, straightforward stuff. I really enjoy the ultra creative stuff. I like going to the clubs and hearing the guys really stretch.
Yeah.
Wow, like music
yeah.
can really get good.
Go
you know,
there.
it's just like
it is interesting.
Yeah.
I was listening to Steve Vai today online on a social media post, and I was like, wow, now that's a guy who always held to his guns, man. He just did what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he built an empire, a career. And he never...
he doesn't get the call for stuff that he doesn't do.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, I'm so glad you said that, because I always tell the story of Gary Novak, who was my childhood. Gary and I, for anybody who doesn't know who Gary Novak is, you should know who he is. He played with Chick Corea, played with Alanis Morissette. Mm-hmm. He's an amazing jazz player, an amazing rock player, amazing just everything.
Multifaceted,
so he and I took our first drum lesson together in Chicago.
That's
we're like
so cool.
Childhood friends. He lives here in LA now. And I mean, he's just one of the most incredible drummers there is. Yeah. I mean, really, really incredible drummer. And so, I go hear him play at these clubs, and he's just shredding. He's just the most incredible thing, and it's so inspiring. And yet, that's not the music that he's making a living from.
No, it's interesting. Yes, the artistic lane and the career lane are two totally different things. Almost.
Yeah, right? You might want to consider what you do creatively as like a pet project or a side project that's just for you, or you can get involved in that, and then having other endeavors. So I got into the computer industry partially because my little brother was doing visual effects for movies, and he kind of, he always had computers around, and I'd be on tour, and unlike guitarists who can like play their guitar in the bus, I couldn't do any of that. So I started figuring out how to do web stuff, and then
to fill the time.
Yeah, and then I built some websites for people, and then my buddy who was working at Microsoft showed him some of my work, and then I ended up working at Microsoft for a couple of years.
That. The Seattle days.
That was an interesting experience because it was one of those gigs where the money was great, and I always tell people I highly recommend working for a lot of money to anybody. And all, my takeaway was
you were doing some good six figures. I remember that.
Yeah, it was crazy money, and so music just became for the fun of it. Like I didn't need any
that
gig.
Paradigm shift for you. We talked extensively.
Yeah,
about this.
and it made me realize like we have the opinions we can afford to have. You know what I mean? Like. If you hate a gig, but you need it, you just you bite your lip or whatever. You're like, no. But like, if it's like, I don't need this, I'm just gonna fly myself home. Forget it. Anyway, it wasn't for me because it was a little too corporate.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was the artist relations manager for Behringer.
I remember that too.
And that was a gig I had never done before. But they were like the fourth largest music company in the world.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
It was a huge gig when I think back on it. But the issues there, which I've now come to discover with all music companies, is it got increasingly hard to convince the higher-ups the value of musicians. And this is really interesting.
Because
I know you were involved. I pulled you in as much as I could.
For the NAMM performances and special showcases and whatnot, yeah.
So some of the leaders there, like they really knew who Lee Ritenour was, and I had just gotten off tour with Lee, so it was kind of an easy in. Like, well, I can just call Lee, and we kind of started down the road of building a custom amp for him and stuff. But with all the other guys, I found myself trying to convince everyone of the value of Nomad, the value of these guys, and to the point where I was actually starting to work with the Foo Fighters. Like I got friendly with those guys, and I was sending some gear to them in their studio, and they didn't end up signing as an endorsement. They're really hard to get. They're sort of the Tiger Woods of the music industry.
You don't really need it. Yeah.
So I remember going to the owner, and I said, I'm so excited we're working with the Foo Fighters. And I remember him saying, that's great, Dave. Now, who are the Foo Fighters? And I was like... Okay.
only the band that's responsible for bringing rock and roll back.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, okay, wow, this is an uphill climb, and that was the beginning and the end. But I'm grateful to the experience, and I'm grateful to even all those perspectives because. And the takeaway, the constructive takeaway for everyone is, I'm not throwing the owner of Behringer under the bus at all.
No.
What I'm saying is all companies, from Fender to Drum Workshop to
there's disconnects.
Name them, they're businessmen first.
That's right.
You know what I mean? They need to make money so they can create this great gear. A lot of young players want to know, how do I get an endorsement? It's like, well, it's easy if you're doing a world tour and you're on TV all the time. That's a really easy thing because it's easy for a businessman to see, well, you're out in the public and playing in front of people all the time. That experience was really interesting to me and frustrating at the same time because I really did enjoy the gig, and it was fun to sit on the other side of the table because I have my own endorsements. Yeah. And so I was just reverse engineering the job. I had no experience doing it.
But it was fun. You did a really good job. Because exactly what you just said. You had your own endorsements, so you reverse engineered the position. Yeah. So you knew exactly what an artist rep was looking for.
And I knew what
a musician.
I knew what a musician needed.
Exactly.
I've been on tour when my gear broke.
Right.
What you need is the company to say, I'm FedExing you a new
either
whatever
that or the
tomorrow.
Company has this in stock, they'll deliver it, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I get it from that other side. And again, that was me putting the shoe on the other foot. Yeah. And I think that's sort of the theme of the philosophy I'm bringing here.
Yes.
I get it from their standpoint. Yes. If you want an endorsement, you can't just expect to get one. It's business with them.
So glad you brought that up, and I think I'm going to add that to my brief moving forward, the endorsement concept.
Yeah.
But hey, listen, this has been amazing. We've touched on everything. I want to focus now, again, we started here, we're going to end here. As self-employed, independent contracting, career musicians, we need multiple streams of income. Yeah. You just said it. So you looked elsewhere, you started doing some programming for Microsoft. I believe you worked for Facebook at one point too. I don't know if you still do that.
Yeah, I still do some freelance work for Facebook,
So, within staying in with the music industry, you created a website called PossibleChops.com. Yeah. Tell us about that. Break that down for us. Once again, the pessimistic retort that I always sling out is market saturation. Market saturation. There's what? We're going on 8 billion people now on the planet? Yeah. We're going to burn the planet into a ball of wax soon if we continue like this, right? Yeah. We all know that. So every market is saturated. There's too much content. There's too much supply, not enough demand. Yeah. But the way you stand out now is almost it's like micro focusing into a niche, and I think you're doing it really well. So break down the concept. I love it. Talk about it, and people go check this out because this is some cool shit.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, so the elevator speech, I guess, is I built a website, and basically what it is an online drumming vocabulary. It's a online library of drumming vocabulary lessons.
Excellent.
That's, in a nutshell, what it is. So it came from my desire as a drummer to add new ideas to my playing. And I would say every instrument is always looking for new ideas. Yeah. You new, get bored creative of your something.
Own little stuff.
Yeah, we're all inspired by other people. And it's like, gosh, I want to play that. And it kind of came from me watching other drummers on YouTube. And, I was sort of jaw-dropping stuff, really great stuff. Some guys would actually try to explain what they were doing. Most would fail. I'm not sure just because you're a great player that makes you a good teacher or that you really can break down what you do. And I know you do some teaching, and we've all had good and bad teachers. Mm-hmm. When I got out of college, I called up all my heroes here in L.A., and I studied with everyone. At least once.
I'm, again, a huge believer in that. Man, I can't believe you did that because I used to do the same thing. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. So everybody have the cojones to call your heroes.
Yes.
And study under them.
So here's my takeaway for what it's worth, and especially for people who don't live in L.A. Yeah. many of these drummers that I studied with, well, I shouldn't say many. So some were really good. They had a system for breaking down what they did. Total changed my playing. Some really great ones. Greg Bissonette, Steve Houghton, amazing teachers. Like they really knew what they were doing and they knew how to teach it. Others who I won't name them, but they were great, and I would go hear them play live, and they were really amazing. And I felt like I got in the lessons, and they never really considered what they did. They just did what they did. So I'm on YouTube 10 years ago, and I'm watching these drummers. Some of the Gospel Chops drummers, some of the new guys. You know, I'm not the new guy anymore. I was watching them. I was like, man, I want some of those chops. And I was trying to figure out what they were doing, and they were explaining it. And I noticed some of them were explaining it wrong. They were just straight up not explaining it right. And I'm like, okay, this is not helpful. And so I was sitting around with my buddy, Gary Novak, and we were like, what if we played stuff and either explained it right or at least did it in short enough pieces and maybe played it in slow motion or something, so you know, like this is what it was, so that other drummers could actually build vocabulary. And I'm a big proponent of this idea that music is a language, you know, just like with the language that you speak, in our case, English, you can read. You can read English. You know the alphabet. You have some vocabulary that you use. You form sentences. You tell stories, right? In music, you know, you learn
that's a
the
great analogy.
Rudiments of playing.
Great analogy.
You have these bits of vocabulary that you draw on to form sentences and tell your musical story. So, Possible Chops is a website for building an online drumming vocabulary. It's a place that you can go and do sort of a virtual jam session with other drummers where I have these drummers sit down and play in 4-bar phrases. Play 2 bars of a beat, you know, so you know where the pulse is, and then rip one of these, you know,
riffs,
ear-melting, like, I don't know what it is, right? And I film it in high frame rate, high definition, and I slow it to half speed, I transcribe it, I put all the stickings there. So these are 10, 20-second lessons. They're little bite-sized bits of vocabulary lessons. They're not 30-minute lessons.
Right.
You know, they're just the pieces that you would use. You could add it to your drumming to enhance it. So either it comes time the end of the phrase and you rip out a great fill, or it's time to take a solo. You can draw on all that vocabulary and tell this really incredible story. So
what guitarists, we refer to them as riffs.
Riffs.
We're just learning a bunch of new riffs.
Yeah.
Which are great because you can actually apply it in real life.
Yes, little riffs. So these are fills or chops. That's we always refer to your
you guys more fills,
chops.
More
Yeah.
riffs,
And I do realize Possible Chops is a sort of a play on words for gospel chops. It wasn't really intentional, but the idea is that I'm trying to make these chops possible, and how you do that is to break it down. Just like in this podcast, we musicians like to talk and talk and talk, which we do, which is fun. But I like the idea, and my lesson learned from the musicians who couldn't teach was I'm letting the music they're playing teach for. I'm letting their playing speak for itself. Just play it. I'll slow it down, I'll transcribe it. Even if you can't read, if you're illiterate as a musician, which is a whole other conversation, you can read the right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, bass drum.
What we call the tablature.
Yeah, exactly. So you can figure it out and start adding all this stuff to it. So, PossibleChops.com. The membership is free. You can sign up for a free membership and you can see a bit of what we're doing there. The sort of the paid memberships or the pro memberships are $10 a month. I've created a promo code, which is Nomad, that you can use.
Excellent.
And if you enter that, you'll get the first month free of paid membership.
Excellent.
So there's no risk there. You can check it out for a month. I've got nearly 200 lessons. I'm releasing a new lesson every day. So there's a new chop lesson literally every day. I've got great drummers like Gary Novak, Gordon Campbell, Jay Williams, Eric Valentine, and it's continuing to grow. Like I feel like I'm tapping into all my buddies here in LA, and I've got another video shoot next week. I'm just going to keep adding.
Maximizing the resources.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they're short. If your attention span is short, this is made for you.
It's perfect. No, it's perfect. I love it.
Yeah, and it's something you can get in. There's a community on there. You can kind of meet with other drummers. You can post your gigs. You can post your own chops up there too. There's some really cool stuff to do in there. It's like it's a whole world in there. And I'm really hopeful that this will be a really good resource for drummers to get new ideas, because it's harder and harder to add to your playing. It's harder.
Right.
There's just so much stuff, and YouTube.
And as we're tasked with so many duties on a regular basis, it is hard to find time to really practice in those amount of hours like we used to when we were younger.
Isn't that the truth? Because there's so much business and family and stuff to deal with. But I think that you could actually get on this for a half hour in a day and add a new word to your vocabulary.
I agree. It's so funny when people ask me the best way to learn guitar. I say, you know what? Just take 5 minutes 3 times a day.
Oh, there you go.
Take 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in lunch, 5 minutes at night.
Yeah.
What? 5 minutes. But actually, we all carry our phones. Put the timer on for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you say, yeah, but my wife said, okay, babe, I just literally need 5 minutes.
5
okay,
minutes.
You got 5
Yeah.
minutes. Okay, in 5 minutes, what am I going to do? Well, if you just look right here and step, so bam, this is perfect.
Yeah. If you give them something really constructive to do, because isn't that the takeaway now?
That is.
You look back at the time you wasted practicing stuff you didn't need to practice.
Eeks.
I mean, really, that's the thing that you can get from the guys who are working now. It's like, okay, enough. Practice the stuff you're not good at. You keep playing the same stuff. That's all you're going to be able to do.
It's so funny because I practiced speed picking for years, and I'm still not as fast as Yngwie Malmsteen. I'm kind of mad about that. Bastards! Speed picking, you lied! It's just not my bag of tricks. It's just not me.
Yeah.
I do other things, but that's not my thing.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think you find what you're honing in on, what speaks to you.
Yeah.
And you have so much material on this website, it sounds like you can pick from a vast array of ideas, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's really just one style. I've been asked before, like, is it all, gospel music? I'm like, no, not at all. I mean, it's just how you use it is totally up to you. And really what I like about the drummer community is, like, we're really not protective of the stuff that we do, because no matter what I show another drummer, he's going to use it his way. And his technique's going to be different. His drums are going to sound different. He's going to put it in a different part of the... It doesn't matter.
Oh, man, this was awesome.
Yeah. I like that. I like to, when I'm introduced on stage, the band's playing or like vamping on something, and on drums, Dave Hooper, I like to actually stop playing and stand up. The expression on everyone.
So really, it is true. Okay, so what is it about modern music that we got so conditioned to hearing drums, bass, some kind of padding, some kind of chords, and some kind of lead, that if you take one of those elements out, you really feel like, oh my gosh, you're missing something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it has just become the expected thing. And, it's hard. You got to imagine, like, I have a lot of percussionist friends, and they struggle to work because that might be one of the first things, like the band leader goes,
what did you call them again?
Budget.
What is this percussionist you speak of?
Yeah, we don't need that.
They're the first to go.
It's hard. It's really tough on them. And it's like, if it wasn't the way that it is, like we would have percussion on every gig, and we'd have horns, and we'd have like live musicians instead of backing tracks and stuff like that. But that's just become the natural thing. And I would say for any drummer that's not young, don't be afraid to listen to new music and embrace what's happening now, because I'm not the 20-something guy, but like I started this website because I was interested in what the drummers who are 20-something are doing. And that's what I got cool tons of on my website. And it's like, I might not look the part, but
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And I tend to do a lot more studio work anyway, so I'm the guy that can do that, and they can say which guy did you get for doing that, and it's like,
right, that's right.
Yeah, it can be me, because I can do all that.
That's right. The more versatile, my dad always taught me, the more versatile you are, the more you're going to work. So
yeah.
And obviously your dad taught you the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't come up through the jingle industry without knowing how to play like Ringo Starr and Alex Van Halen and Tony Williams and Peter Erskine and Steve. You gotta put all those hats on for sure.
Wow. PossibleJobs.com.
Yep. Use the promo code Nomad and you get a month free of premium memberships.
Man,
yeah.
and your Instagram and Facebook are Possible
Chops
as well?
Yep,
Okay.
that's right.
Everywhere you go, man. I love it.
Yeah,
This
I'm
is
omnipresent.
Awesome. Yes, I love it. Dave Hooper, drummer
Yeah.
extraordinaire to the stars and beyond.
Thanks for having me on, Nomad. I appreciate it, man.
Dude, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to The Career Musician. Please click the subscribe button and share the Career Musician podcast on your social media feeds.
Thank you for tuning in to the Career Musician Podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please click the subscribe button and share this podcast on all of your social media feeds. I love bringing you behind the scenes and sharing valuable insight from the world's leading experts in music and entertainment.
I'm just a nomad, nowhere man, writing the songs in this one-man band. I know